So, what's it like when you actually start in consulting? Is it really jumping in at the deep end? What's the expectation of you from day one? What are all the things you have to figure out or do? Which are the tough bits and who's around to help? Given that consulting is such a competitive profession to get into, it can be pretty daunting when you finally reach your first day. A very smart junior consultant recently asked me about my first day in consulting, so I thought I'd tell you about what I told him. I'll tell you about what I had to do, how I felt, what I learned or realised, what took me by surprise, what I found hard, and what I wasn't at all ready for. Welcome back, by the way. I'm Charlie, a consulting senior manager and remote business owner, and my Consultant Explorer channel is to help you be so successful in your early years in management consulting that you're set up for total freedom to do whatever you want to in life. And I figured I would sit on a beanbag today, given this is a bit more of a fireside chat. Actually, I lied. I'm going to tell you about my third day at Accenture, because my first 2 days were training days. All that happened on those 2 training days was I joined a bunch of other experienced hires who, by the way, were generally a fair amount older than me because I was only 18 months out of uni, in a corporate event space that had been booked for the training. We were given laptops and walked through how to set up our profiles. We were taught about Accenture's mission and values as well as about its history. We were shown some of the key internal tools like where you log time and expenses, how you get into the internal portal, and where you can find online training. And then we were encouraged to meet each other over drinks in the evening, for which only myself and one other person stayed, which I couldn't quite believe, but I'm still friends with that person, even to this day. Aside from him, I was a bit worried that people weren't going to be as sociable and friendly as at my previous job, to be honest. And then once training was finished, it was time to dive into the deep end further than I had ever dived before. So here is how my first day on an Accenture consulting project went. It was a Wednesday. At end of day on the day before, I'd received an email from an MD asking me to join a project and be in a specific location in the morning by 10 a.m. to which I'd agreed. In fact, it was the MD who had interviewed me, so I knew and trusted him. So there I was, leaving home and taking a tube and train to the outskirts of London into the suburbs near a major airport. I'd actually spent a year at a different consulting firm already, so I was used to the commute out of town, and this time I appreciated the later start. That morning, I thought that MD was just being easy on me, but in hindsight, it must have been to give my new manager some time to settle into their day before they could turn their attention to bringing me up to speed. At about 10 to 10, my train pulled into the destination station. The most poignant thing in my memory is that there was a distinct smell of burnt coffee from a nearby coffee factory, which was really not very nice. I'd been told to look out for the client-branded bus and hop onto it as it would take me to the office. So I hopped on as soon as I saw it, as I'd been told to do. I looked around at everyone else on that bus and wondered whether they were Accenture people or client people, because I knew that generally everyone wears client lanyards. I was worried about speaking to anyone because I didn't want to accidentally let on how little I knew about anything to a client. Also, I was excited about working for this client specifically because it was a household name and that felt cool. Hopping off the bus, I registered at reception and waited there whilst everyone else from the bus went upstairs. They all already had their passes that opened the security doors. I might have felt a bit lost at that point if reception hadn't known to expect me. They had my name written down, so that was validating at least. And they made a call to someone so that person would come and collect me. It was my new manager who came down to get me, and she took me straight to a meeting room to explain the project. I remember the meeting room being dimly lit and it had no windows, so it wasn't the easiest environment to stay alert in. I also remember feeling a bit conflicted because I knew I'd need to impress my manager and therefore not ask stupid questions. But I also wanted to learn everything as quickly as possible. She told me the project I was joining involved Salesforce, which I'd never heard of, but she said it's a technology used by salespeople. And I remember wondering why salespeople would use technology when their job is to talk to people and convince them to buy stuff. She said I'd be leading a work stream. As she said that, I wondered whether I should ask what a work stream is, but decided against it because it seemed like something I should really know already. Apparently my work stream would be doing opportunity management, but I missed the bit where she explained that because I was still working out whether I should ask about what a work stream is. Oops, now I was even more lost. Apparently leading this work stream meant that I would be managing 5 people too. I'd never managed anyone before, so the idea that I'd be now managing 5 people all at once really scared me, especially with zero training about how to do it. Not gonna lie though, I was pretty excited at the prospect of it as a career opportunity, even if I was gonna start by doing it badly. One thing that struck me was that she said that this project was apparently a market first for Salesforce implementation, because no other company has implemented it in the UK before, only in the US. And she said that it was actually a world-leading implementation in terms of size, bigger than any US implementation. Apparently, those 2 facts would be important for my career progression, and I remember the thought of it felt kind of exciting, but I wasn't really sure at this point why it would mean career acceleration. Surely it just made me an even smaller fish in an even bigger pond. Looking back on it now though, it was priming skills in me that would be in hot demand for years to come, making it easy to get on strategic new projects in the future and play an important role because of my incredible experience. If you want to know more about finding and choosing roles, by the way, then I have a video for that. Here's the link. Once we'd finished the project run through, we walked through into the open office space, and I remember being surprised by just how many people were on this project team. I hadn't expected that the team would be that big. My manager walked me around and introduced me to everyone who wasn't clearly busy on a call. And as she introduced me, I definitely forgot every name instantly because I was trying to think of what I should even say to these people, given I had such a limited understanding of what I would be doing, and what they said about what they were doing made zero sense to me too. I do remember that I was struck by the diversity of everyone, because it definitely hadn't been that diverse anywhere I'd worked before. And that made me realise why that MD who interviewed me had asked me how well I worked with people who were from different cultures with different accents. I was also struck by the different vibes in different corners of the room, where sub-teams who were sitting together seemed to create various group personalities of their own. Having met everyone on the floor, my manager walked me to my desk and told me that this final person that she was introducing me to, who would be sitting next to me, would be my buddy. It turned out that my buddy was the only person who would be reporting to me who already worked on this project. Everyone else in my team would be new to the project too, and starting next week. And I was glad that they were starting a bit later, given that managing people who were just as clueless as me about this project seemed even more daunting. I figured that at least I'd be able to get a bit of a head start over the next couple of days as to what on earth was going on before they joined next week. Once I was sat down, my buddy helped me get set up with my new login and password for project-related stuff, like document stores and project management tools. I started to organise things for myself, like creating folder paths on my computer so that I would always remember where I'd put everything. I'm not always super organised, so that must have been a reaction to feeling so confused at the time. At midday, my buddy asked whether I was hungry, and in truth, I was starving. He took me upstairs to the office cafe for lunch. It turned out there were no shops in the area within walking distance of the office, and the cafe's pretty sparsely stocked, so it seemed to be that everyone brought their lunch with them. I clearly hadn't planned for this, but thankfully I'm not too picky and I managed to find a nice pasta salad in the cafe fridge. My buddy and I sat in the cafe area having a brief chat with general small talk about my journey that morning, how long he'd been on the project, who various people across the team were, and at a very high level what had happened so far on the project. It wasn't long enough to dive into much, as he had to get back to his desk for a call at 12:30. Back downstairs at my laptop, I started reading through all the content that I could see saved in the central project document stores, noting down all my questions as I went. I figured that if I grouped all my questions together, then we would use time efficiently when I asked them to my buddy. And actually it was something he later said that he really appreciated me doing, so make sure you take note and do that too. He'd been on the project way longer than me, and honestly seemed to know absolutely everything inside out. So I remember feeling so awkward that I was going to be managing him, and I really wasn't sure how I'd ever catch up with his knowledge enough to be a good manager to him. Thinking back now, if only I'd known the importance of being a manager and not a more senior specialist. I've got a video on this if you'd like to know more. Here's the link to how generalists manage specialists. If I'd known that I didn't necessarily need to know even as much as him about what he was doing, then it probably would have been easier. I hadn't got through all the content that I wanted to read yet, but at 3:30 my buddy invited me to listen into a call he was joining. I honestly can't remember what that call was about, but I do remember feeling that I didn't understand a single word that was being said. I also had no idea which of the people sat around the office were the names that I could see on the Skype call. Yes, Skype, I'm that old. except when I could see them speaking into their headsets at their desks. I was worried that being present in calls like this would mean that people would expect me to know about everything that had happened during the call, because in reality, I wouldn't be walking away with any genuinely useful knowledge at all. In hindsight, it would have been good if I'd known that expectations are not that high, and that there are certain types of things that you have to pick up first before you can pick up the next type of things, and that is totally okay and expected. I frantically added any questions I had to my ever-expanding list as the call progressed, but I was also worrying that some of these questions were going to sound overly basic. I felt like that was okay though, because that's what a buddy is for, and besides, my buddy seemed so nice that I was pretty sure he'd be okay with it, even if I was supposed to be his boss. At the end of that call, I sat down with my buddy in a meeting room to go through all of my questions. His very helpful and simple explanations were genuinely so good in developing my understanding. Some key things started to click into place in my head, however basic. But I remember that every new thing I understood just created more questions that I wanted to know the answer to. He did a very good job of keeping patient with my continuous stream of questions. There wasn't enough time in the day to sit there and go through absolutely everything, and ultimately we ran out of time. At 5 p.m, we agreed to stop the work chat for the day and walk back to the station together and get the train back into London. The train times were a bit annoying, so if we didn't leave at that point, we'd be waiting till much later to get home. I hadn't realised the station was walking distance, to be honest, but was keen to get some air, even if it smelt of burnt coffee. As we walked, our conversation moved to getting to know each other as people with real lives outside of work. I remember being so glad I would be working with this guy. He seemed super smart, super nice, and super down to earth, and it was going to make a massive difference to my settling in and enjoying work. It didn't take long to get to where we parted ways on the tube in our respective journeys home, saying bye for the evening. Arriving home at 6:30, I remember feeling absolutely shattered, even though I had the nagging feeling that I'd done nothing of any value whatsoever that day. In fact, I'd taken valuable time away from valuable people, which made me feel the pressure to get up to speed even more quickly to be able to give back. In hindsight, it's clear that when you're on such a steep learning curve, things always feel much more exhausting than they would do when you can engage your brain's autopilot a lot more. And that valuable people give you time because ultimately it pays back when you become valuable to them yourself. I think I probably decided that night that I'd be kind to myself and get a ready meal or something on the way home so I didn't have to spend energy cooking. I also definitely remember making a mental note to turn my Tinder profile off the next morning before leaving home because I didn't want to pick up anyone at work, either colleague or client. So, what do you think about my third day at Accenture? Maybe if that's helped you understand more about your potential future first day in consulting. Like me, you might have more questions than before you watch this. Or maybe it's just been validating for you to hear that my experience was as daunting as yours. Or maybe your experience wasn't as daunting at all. In fact, as first days go, I would say that mine was particularly daunting, so you definitely shouldn't expect yours to be quite as bad. Mine was a lot of firsts all at once. New company, new client, new colleagues, new projects, new boss, sure, every first day has that. But I also had new technology, new management responsibility, new ways of working, new seniority, and a whole new level of expectation. That's tough. But you know what? Aside from feeling utterly exhausted that evening, I was so excited. I knew that jumping this deep into the deep end was the fastest way to progress, and I could see very tangibly the instant step up that my career had taken. That's the best thing about a daunting or stressful situation. It's an opportunity for you to rise and grow faster than you would have done otherwise. So long as you rise to the challenge, that is. So if you found the story of my first day insightful, then let me know by clicking the like button. And if you'd like to see what I post next, then definitely subscribe to my channel. Social media links are below if you'd like those, and if you have any questions or comments, then feel free to use the comment section here and I'll do my best to answer absolutely everything. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and I wish you all the best with your exploring.